I am so excited to introduce Natalie McHale, who is a board member for Slow Food Utah and a farm to school marketing specialist with the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. Patrick Ramsay, a poet and advocate here in Utah. Woo! And Chef Wendy Juarez, the founder of Prime Corn. Yay, thanks for coming. Bigger round of applause for these Utah people. Come on. Thank you for being here. Patrick, I get to start with you. You have a poem to share with all of us, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have a couple, but we'll start with just the one. This is about content, which we just wrapped up the conversation about, and just the internet. I'd rather be influenced to send more postcards, to kiss with more tongue and let cantaloupe juice run all the way down to my elbows. I'd rather be influenced to cook more quiche and make cold brew at home, to wake up early and stay in bed, to be better at remembering my friends' birthdays, to vote early. I want an algorithm that worships heirloom tomatoes, the sound of that one summer cricket outside my window, peach sorbet with tiny spoons, the way the mountains go copper at dusk, the chatter of your dog laughing in a dream across the room.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's a powerful way to get us started. As a storyteller yourself, I wonder what inspires you besides everything you mentioned in that poem.
This is like one of the questions that I actually prepared for, so thanks for asking it. The great poet Joy Sullivan says that poetry is about naming the ache that we experience. And I think that poets and artists in general, the great task of our time is to not only name the ache, but find the hope. And because what is hope if not ache for a better tomorrow? And then our responsibility is to tell the stories that can surround that hope and hope that it finds the ripples and finds the right people.
You just say poetry even when you're not reading a poem. I love it. I love it. Natalie, if I can turn to you, Patrick talked about hope is that ache for something better. And I feel like the work that you do is the sort of manifestation of that ache, right? You're doing something that is so important with Utah's Slow Food chapter to foster community and really build a local movement. Can you talk about how that works? I think there's still a misconception around slow food in many places that it's only for elite folks, but it's really part of something that comes from the ground up and honors different kinds of farming practices, honors different cultures, honors the environment.
Yeah, it's really hard to summarize slow food, and I'm still really surprised when I talk to anyone who doesn't know what slow food is. And if you don't know, that's okay, but it's a massive international organization, and I'm honored to be on the Utah chapter. It's completely volunteer run, but most states in the United States have one. Most countries have a chapter. But yeah, so our goal is to just take what Utah has to offer and makes food special here, and make that our basis is clean food, fair food. So like we talked a lot about today, I've heard with other panels, like indigenous food is a big part of it, connecting everyone with food, making food fair for everyone, highlighting what makes good food local in Utah and connecting that with even our neighbors, not looking at the state borders. So we work a lot with like different chapters, Colorado, and just, letting everyone know that the beauty of slowing down food, like I think your poem resonates with.
What does good food look like in Utah? Can you give some concrete examples of what Slow Food is trying to promote?
Yeah, so we have a micro grant program, which is huge, and with that we used to do one massive fundraiser every year that was a high ticket price, but we raised a lot of money that the goal was to give it to farmers and producers and up and coming restaurant owners who are just trying to, get off the ground.
Sure.
But now we're kind of restructuring how we make that money to align better with our values, and fair is a huge part of that. So making sure we're hosting events that are welcome for anyone. So some of them are for families, so that your kid can come and see what slow food's about, and then just making sure it's more affordable so that anyone can come and enjoy slow food. We highlight a lot of local groups, so trying to bring new food purveyors, partnering with really great organizations that are highlighting them as well, like International Rescue Committee.
Nice.
They're great here. And they bring together, the best of the best and really bring a diverse audience to slow food. And again, just making sure we're reaching everyone versus just a small population.
How can people connect to Slow Food Utah?
We have a website, of course, slowfoodut.org. And then we have our social media. We just had our board retreat, and there's big changes coming this year. We took a little bit of a hiatus with COVID and restructuring, like we said, going from that big fundraiser to something small and consistent throughout the year. We also do a lot of farm mobs, so if you just don't want to come to an event, you can get your hands dirty, and we are, we're trying to be the go-to for farmers if they need support, and we send people their way. So whether it's 5 to 50 people to help pick trees on an orchard or plant trees, or just a few to help weed one day, that's a great way to get involved also. So yeah, our website, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks so much, Natalie. That's great. Chef Wendy, if I can turn to you, you're really focusing through your cuisine on pre-Hispanic cuisine. And I'm wondering what this looks like, because I think many of us in this room probably can't imagine that.
So before the Spaniards came to America, we didn't have large animals like cows, like pigs, but we had our milpa and everything that grew around it, and the small animals. So we were omnivores, but we mostly ate vegan food. And when I came here, I missed a lot of those flavors, and I was trying to find a space that could have good Mexican food, and many of those places twisted the idea of authentic Mexican food. So I wanted to show what my people has been doing for centuries, and everything goes around corn. We have 64 types of corn, and I use pretty much yellow, white, and purple, and they all have different textures, and I like to use them for different things. It's not the same to make an enchilada than to make a sope, than to make something stuffed like gorditas or tlacoyos. And I also like to use the authentic Nahuatl word for those plates as part of bringing my roots and sharing with the people of Utah.
That's amazing. What has the reaction been in bringing this kind of something unexpected to folks who have never had this kind of food before?
Mostly the vegan community have loved my food, and also adventurous eaters, because one of the ingredients I use is nopales, and that's slimy. So it can be challenging to try it the first time, but it's a superfood because it has fiber, but it has a high content of protein. I also use with la coche, and it's the fungi that grows inside the corn kernels, and it's black. So if you see it, it's like, oh, what is that?
Right.
But if you taste it, it's like, oh. So breaking that perception of what am I eating changes a lot. And fortunately, people that have tried the food come back because they like it. So I want to take that as it's not just what it is, but how you take it. And a lot of it is the intention.
Right.
So not just to not be hungry, but also to nurture your body, to take a break and enjoy what you have in front of you, the dish, all the nutrients, and to be grateful for that food and for all the hands that help bring that food in front of you.
That gratitude is so important, and honoring the folks who helped produce it in the land where it came from.
Yes, and when we work on that, we have been doing almost as a ritual. It tastes different.
Right.
It's something in our senses that is more, it's bigger, it's different.
More
The way-
nourishing?
yes, yes. We actually, I have been working with a dietitian from the University of Utah. Her name is Madeleine French. And we have been working with the community to educate about healthier habits to prevent diseases. And she was mentioning that just not eating alone, having someone to share the food is healthier,
Right.
and you absorb the nutrients in a different way. So
Wow.
just having a company changes the way our body is taking the
Wow.
food.
That makes so much sense. We should all learn to share and eat with one another a little bit better. Thank you so much, Chef Wendy.
Thank you.
Natalie, if I can come back to you for a moment, you wear a couple of different hats. You know, I feel like you really live and breathe the work that you do at Slow Food, because what I'm assuming is your paid job. you work at the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food, and you focus on this idea of building networks and community. And Chef Wendy's been talking about sort of, bringing people together to eat together. There's an epidemic of loneliness in this country and probably around the world. And I wonder how your work, sort of networking and that community building sort of combats that and helps feed people in different ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So just for a little background, this organization, it's Farm to Fork, which is the statewide farm to school initiative, is what we call it. So we empower schools to get better food on their local food on children's plates, and then also connect with their farmers as well, and also increase ag education in school. So our motto is not every kid needs to farm, and not everyone needs to farm, but everyone should know their farmer. So originally there was someone under the Utah State Board of Education, and she's still my counterpart, and she was the one running the show, doing it all. But then they brought me on under the Utah Department of Ag and Food as someone to kind of be that liaison with the schools and the farmers, because that was a huge gap that we were seeing, is even when my counterpart would connect farms with schools, the schools were just throwing it on the plate, which is great. That's a huge hurdle. It's a lot of work, but there wasn't a story being told, and the kids weren't actually noticing that it was coming from someone local, and we wanted to make sure that they're knowing their farmers. So my goal is to just continue to recruit farmers, take away any barriers, or just learn what we can do to make sure it's easier to connect them with schools, and more specifically the kids. So also not just, again, putting the food on their plate, but getting kids out to the farm on field trips. It's not an easy thing. I'm still learning the procurement side. There's a lot that goes into, especially public schools, child nutrition, and what we're allowed to do and can't do. But yeah, so just fostering that connection, even if they don't ever shake hands with the farmers, trying to just foster that sense of community, putting maps in the cafeterias that show, like, this is where your beef came from today. It's only 20 miles away, or,
That's great.
and then just even some of the farmers are sending us, like, beautifully done drone videos of their ranch that we play in the cafeteria and kids get to watch. So just really connecting them. And then with that, like, we're hosting tours on some of the ranches, so school groups and nutrition staff who are just completely burnt out can actually see where the food is coming from and help energize them. So yeah, just again, and then using social media to tell that story. So we can brag about the people who are doing the extra work on top of feeding kids every day. They're going above and beyond to make sure it's locally sourced, and giving them the credit they deserve.
I think, Natalie, what you're saying builds on so much of what we heard today, that it's about relationship building. It's about breaking down silos and getting people to talk to one another about these issues and share their perspectives, not always agree. That's not the point here. But you bring up one other point that I think is so crucial for this, too, is that getting students, kids in schools to see farming as something that's an opportunity, that it's cool, that these are actual people producing food. That has to be really satisfying for the farmers, for you, and for the kids and the teachers.
Very, yeah, and a lot of it too is it's cool, but it's also really hard.
Right,
is what
right.
they see, like, it's okay if a kid is like, I do not want to do that. And that's just as valuable, just for them to see that this person who is making this food for me works their butt off to do it.
Right,
And it's
right.
not simple. And it tastes better too. Like a lot of times, a lot of schools weren't even, educating the kids that it was better food, but then they were noticing that kids are like, why are the tacos better today? And it was because it was local bison versus beef from, wherever it was coming from. And just that's what helped teachers start saying like, oh, we do need to tell the story. And we do
Yeah.
need to make sure, like we're seeing that the kids love it and it's better. So, yeah.
And I wonder if that has, I'm sure it does have ripple effects. Like, I'm not going to waste that food because I know how hard that farmer works. So if I can't eat it all right now, I'm going to take it with me. Those kinds of things that you can't really quantify or have a data set on.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's part of our goal is to reduce waste. And there's a lot happening. And luckily, there's a lot of states currently doing it better than Utah, to be frank. But it's great to look at them as examples. Like over in Vermont, I think it was, like they do bulk milk now. So the kid goes up with a glass and fills up their milk versus having which was like a huge thing in Utah right now. They just couldn't make the actual box that the milk comes in. And that was like, so just looking at what other states are doing and
Yeah.
even across the world, it's been a great way to connect our community with people all over and seeing what they're doing better and how we can replicate it. So
That's so
giving them
great.
credit.
That's so great. Thank you so much. Patrick, obviously today's event has really focused on storytelling and being able to share things through arts and culture and bring attention to solutions and instilling hope and inspiration. And I'm wondering, when you're thinking about your writing process, how that works, because obviously you're telling a very hopeful story through your poems. And so what is your writing process like?
Honestly, a word or a phrase will just show up, and oftentimes that's because of my environment. Like right now, there's a rally happening at the state capitol for Save Our Great Salt Lake. I'm writing a lot about the Great Salt Lake because it's in dire need of attention. So phrases will kind of come up, and I'll just follow it. Like, I'd rather be influenced. That poem, I was just kind of paying attention to the influencers that were in my feed, watching friends become commercials, and like, well, damn, I wish I would hear more about tomatoes, or listening to my dog, or, yeah. So then when I have the bandwidth, I'll sit down and give that word or that phrase the time that it wanted and try to write it into a poem.
I think poetry is more needed now than ever before. I think especially what sort of, with the pandemic, everything we've seen sort of politically over the last several years, how can we encourage more sort of young poets or older poets, people who don't think of themselves as poets, to actually put words to paper?
Yeah, I mean, if you write, you're a writer. I think there's a lot of gatekeeping that has historically happened around what a poet is or what a writer can be. But if you're making art, you're an artist. If you're writing, you're a writer. If you're writing a poem, you're a poet. I think that gathering, we talked about having events in the last session, events are super important. Community around art is super important. And I think just inviting folks in and sharing your work with others too. Like, I bet a lot of folks in this room right now journal or write or muse on in their notes app on their phone. Share it with somebody. I bet the person that you share it with has something to share with you too. And there's such connection to be had in that vulnerability. I think there's a lot of power there.
There is so much power and vulnerability. Thank you for that. Wendy, chefs and cooks of all kinds are storytellers, and I'm wondering how you try to share the stories of what you're making, those 64 different kinds of corn, the other things that you're cooking. How do you share that story in a way that's effective and makes people really feel nourished, like we talked about before?
So my food is the story of my family and my ancestors, and my mom and my grandmother cooking in the kitchen, and our best times, our best stories happened in those kitchens. So sometimes when friends come to see me, I'm cooking,
Yeah.
and I'm like, come over, let's talk while I'm doing this.
Sure.
Having people be part of what they are eating is making a story.
I love it.
And for example, we have had some classes, and they make their own tortillas, and they weren't ready for it. But they did it gracefully, and they enjoyed it. And we, for example, in the milpa, we would just eat tortillas and beans or an avocado or whatever was around. And that's our meal. So if I am talking with friends and we are making tortillas and the food is not ready, I will just cut some cheese or an avocado and here.
Right.
And that's a story we will tell to other people. That's something they will feel different about. And that's what my family did for so many years. Just being present changes our perception of everything, especially food, and that's my art or the way I communicate, the way I show someone I care or I love them is like, here, I made this for you. And most times people feel it because they are like, oh, I can know that you made this especially for me, or that you cared to make this. So they enjoy it.
Right.
They don't just eat it, they enjoy it.
That's so critical, right? Being present. And I think you're so right that the best stories happen in the kitchen when people are sort of communing with one another. Go ahead.
Yes, it's part of the family and not just the blood. Sometimes friends are family, sometimes strangers become part of our family. And by sharing the most precious thing that is food is making them part of my family.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. We're running out of time, so Patrick, I want to give you a chance to close us out with another poem.
All right, let's do it. Okay, speaking of slow food, I had chickens, and they're in my backyard. Yeah. Breakfast recipe for seasonal affective disorder. Sad. At some point in keeping chickens, you learn that hens require 12 to 16 hours of sunlight each day to lay eggs. Yesterday, the winter solstice, we got just 9 hours of sun. These days are the shortest of the year, impossibly short, immediately dark. And yet, yesterday, for no good reason, the hen who hunted sunbathing spots on the back porch all summer long lays her perfect bourbon egg. On the shortest morning of the shortest day, I palm what must be the newest egg on earth. I cook it, sunny side up with fresh ground pepper. I eat it with the very last croissant. The yolk drips a good golden mess, and a small pool of August sun takes shape on my plate. Thanks.
Woo! Thank you so much. Natalie, Patrick, Chef Wendy, Utah is so lucky to have you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
You so much. Thank you. Bigger round of applause, everyone.